When the internet first began, it felt rather like a free festival. But now it feels more like a prison camp, or, at best, a really strict boarding school. All the major sites are policed by censorious moderators, finger-wagging guardians poised to stamp out any hint of wrongthink, or any sort of rambunctious tomfoolery. And this digital Gestapo are assisted by the fact-checkers. Now they, naturally, are all of the same political bent. And their remit's not so much accuracy as the enforcement of their ideology. After all, they spent a year stamping out any suggestion that COVID might have originated in a lab in Wuhan, as Donald Trump had suggested. But now it appears that Trump may have been right all along. And we can detect the partisan nature of those fact-checkers everywhere. There's an image that did the rounds recently, and as it supports the narrative that big tech loves to push, it was readily encouraged, and was shared millions of times. The trouble is that Frederick Patterson, the man standing proudly by that car, was born nearly a decade after slavery ended. He was never a slave. He also founded his own company nearly 2 decades after Henry Ford. So that claim was also a lie. And it's worth noting that Patterson only sold around 30 cars, which might be why he's less famous than the man who founded one of the most successful and enduring businesses of all time. And all of this information is freely available on the link that accompanied that image. But while the fact-checkers will clamp down on any right-leaning inaccuracies, they were happy to let this one slide. And these inconsistencies are everywhere. Take Class War, the radical left-wing activist group. This is their banner. Now, if any right-leaning group employed similar imagery, it would be deleted. They would get a lifetime ban, and they'd probably be arrested. But if you're on the left, such vile proclamations are considered fine. And these double standards continue to proliferate. When Ollie Robinson was poised to make his debut for England in Test cricket, some bitter, vengeful Puritan dredged up a couple of jokes he had posted on the internet a decade before, when he was just a teenager. His Test debut should have been the happiest day of his life. Instead, he was kicked off the squad, and his life and career is in tatters. Yet racist tweets recently emerged from Megan Rapinoe too. If there was any consistency at play, then she'd be banned as well. But of course, that isn't going to happen, because she's a darling of the woke commissars. Gwen Berry joined that club too when the Olympic hammer thrower showed her distaste for America and the Stars and Stripes. A whole slew of gross comments about rape and racist slurs on white people, Mexicans, and the Chinese quickly emerged. But Berry isn't going to get banned either, because if you're on the left, you can be as abusive as you want. And it emerged that Billie Eilish had made some teenage indiscretions too. But the same double standards that condemned Ollie Robinson will protect her as well. Now, I'm not arguing that Megan Rapinoe or Billie Eilish should be cancelled. I'm arguing that Ollie Robinson should be allowed to play cricket. That our society must stop being so judgmental and must allow room for forgiveness. The whole internet is guilty of this sort of twisted mania. But the worst culprit is almost certainly Twitter. Now, as we know, Donald Trump got a lifetime ban from Twitter for allegedly inciting violence. But the site still allows propaganda to be posted for Al-Qaeda. Now, call me crazy, but I'm pretty sure that Al-Qaeda incite violence more than Trump, who specifically called for peaceful protest, by the way. Thousands, or tens of thousands of moderate conservatives have been banned from Twitter, but the site actively encourages support for Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS. This isn't just the sort of baffling double standard that saw Ollie Robinson cancelled while Megan Rapinoe and Gwen Berry breeze by, still lionised as woke icons. This is derangement on a scale that's impossible to calculate. None of us would seek to define the whole of Islam by the worst radicals that religion has to offer. But fundamental Islam is a scourge that threatens human civilization. The enemy is at the gates, but Jack Dorsey and his deluded little minions have flung the gates open and laid out the welcome mat, while silencing the critics of Earth's most evil ideology. Do any of these people have kids? Can they even comprehend what they're doing to their children's futures? Do they even care? It's an old saying that you should beware of being so open-minded that your brain falls out. And I can't think of a clearer example of that flaw than this boneheaded obstinance. The judgment of history will be harsh on Dorsey and his ilk, because the consequences of their miscalculations will be severe. And their peers are not just surrendering wholesale to our enemies, to those who make no secret of how desperate they are to destroy us, because they're destroying Western civilization from within as well. This much was evident in the startling testimony of Yeonmi Park. This young woman is one of the most remarkable people of modern times. She escaped the prison camp that is North Korea by fleeing that state and crossing the Gobi Desert at just 13 years old. But having escaped to the West and won a place at Columbia University, she issued a stark warning about what she found.
So when I was at school, though, I was excited about learning about history and how the people thought back then. And one of the person at the orientation was asking who loves Jane Austen and who reads these classical books. And I was like, I love those books. I just thought it was a good thing, right? And then she was like, did you know that those writers who had colonial mindset were racist and bigots wrote their books? So they are subconsciously brainwashing you. And that's when I realized, wow, this is insane. And I literally thought America was that different, and I just saw so much similarity that I saw in North Korea, and I was started worrying about this country. Mainstream education is purposefully designed to now resent this Western democracy. It's right, the things that I was learning at school are appalling, right? They tried to explain things from everything was all about white men and how they tried to overpower, and how white men destroyed the humanity, right? Mao killed the most people than on this human history. He killed 15 millions of Chinese during the Communist Revolution. And Hitler was killed 60 million people. But the kids don't understand it, and they still playing this fire with the ideology we call communism or socialism. Colombia is all about safe place and all about not having hate speech. And before every class, it is the same thing. We go around and tell us your pronoun. And English is my third language. I learned it as an adult. I sometimes really say he or she by mistake, not because I don't respect them, but now they suddenly ask me to call them they, and how the heck do I incorporate in my sentences? I literally thought it felt like the regression in civilization, you know, and maybe even North Korea is just not nuts, right? Like I was like, yeah, North Korea was pretty crazy, but not as this crazy. What shocking to me is that North Korea, we don't have internet, we don't have access to Shakespeare or like any of these great thinkers. We don't know, but here, while having everything, people choose to be brainwashed and they deny it. That's like where I question like what it means to be a human being. I still don't know. Education almost make you not to be able to think critically, even though in the name of critical thinking, that's what they do. Like,
This is what all those oh so earnest, holier than now woke activists have created. Our enemies are laughing at us. And America, long the beacon of liberty, is now less free than North Korea. Let that sink in for a bit. If you've enjoyed this film, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in these topics, I've written 2 books which go into them in extensive detail. They're called The Tyranny of the Left, and they're available on the links below. Please feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.